Hey everybody, it's Charles Alvarez. Welcome to the second video on how to engage, empower, and encourage your employees to generate more performance and to build leaders in your staff so that you can actually scale your business and get it to the next level so that you can leverage your time and enjoy all of the benefits that true business ownership has to offer. So in our first video, we kind of talked about the main components necessary to properly lead your company going forward. We talked about the fact that in order for a company really to scale, the first thing that it needs to have is what's called an identity statement. We talked about how having an identity statement really is the why you're in business. In other words, of all the different things you could have chosen to do, why did you choose to get into the business that you have? And it's interesting because as we have actually implemented this at over 1,107 companies, after yesterday, now it's 1,109 companies. What we have found is that oftentimes companies struggle with identifying what is their purpose or why are they in business, what is their identity statement. But I tell you what, once they figure that out, once they actually see that and they actually resonate with that and that touches them in a manner that really excites them and really excels them to continue moving forward, what we find is that a lot of the other things almost kind of fall out of it. So really connecting with what your identity is, what your brand purpose is absolutely critical in leading your company forward and also developing leaders inside your corporation. Because here's the thing, y'all, if you're not developing other leaders in your corporation and if you're the only leader who is a part of it, then your business is going to be stuck for quite a long time. And I talked to a client today who actually is using Lead with Purpose. Says, Charles, thank you so much for this because I feel like I no longer have to be the person that has to come up with all the answers. I've actually now empowered my people really to make decisions for themselves and help move the business forward. And a lot of that started with having what the brand purpose is and really having people connect with that, because as we talked about in the first video, people only want two things as far as employees are concerned. Number one is they want to feel appreciated for the work that they do contribute. In other words, they want to be appreciated for their level of productivity, however small in your mind you think it is. Which brings up a whole other story that we'll talk about later on. And the second thing is they want to feel part of something bigger than themselves. And by having that identity statement or that brand purpose, people really connect that, you know what, this isn't just a place to come to work. This isn't just a place that I'm going to come to collect a paycheck. This is a place that I get to make an impact in the world and to my community and to the lives of the customers and or clients that we speak with. So having that brand purpose or the identity statement is absolutely crucial. The second thing that we talked about was having your 5 core values, and not some vague core value that doesn't really mean much or is so subjective, but having core values that actually you can not only adhere to but also hold your people accountable to. Because if you don't have those core values in your business as to how you go about operating your business and how you go about serving your customers, what happens is your employees don't have a true north. In other words, they don't really have an understanding of which level of expectation you want them to perform to. And the whole purpose of core values is to give them that. So those 5 core values are really there to hold your team accountable and to also hold yourself accountable to make sure that they're actually fulfilling that on a day-to-day basis. The third thing we talked about is doing a SWOT analysis and really getting the input of your leadership team as you go about doing this. Just have a honest feedback look of what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what the opportunities are, not only within our business, but also within the marketplace that you serve, and what are the threats, who are our competitors, what are the things that are threatening our advancement? Is it the fact that we need to increase the productivity of our employees? Do we need to create leaders within our organization? Do we need to invest in our people in order to get our business to the next level? So that could just be an opportunity as well. And it also could be a threat, because if you don't develop those leaders, what's going to happen to your turnover and what's going to happen to the people on your staff? Because what we find is, although there are exceptions to this rule, most people like to feel like they're part of an organization that allows them to reach their goals as well, which is one of the last things we talked about, which is what is your 10-year vision, or what we call our blue sky vision for our company. Because as we talked about in the first video, the best definition of leadership that I've ever heard is a leader, and this was created by Ronald Reagan, so I think it comes from a pretty good source, which is a leader is one who has a vision of the future and can enlist other people to buy into that vision in a manner where they can also reach those goals as well. Because at the end of the day, what we find is that dictatorships don't work well. I mean, if you look at the history of the world and looked at dictators, when it comes to Stalin or Hitler, we find that although for a short period of time they do serve a purpose, over a long period of time it really crushes the human nature and the human spirit. So what we find is that if you actually articulate where your blue sky vision is and what the vision for your company is over the next 10 years, then what you start getting feedback on is, okay, well, how do you see yourself fitting into that blue sky vision? And then they start seeing how they can accomplish their own goals within the context of that vision. And extremely powerful. Once people have a vision and a hope of their future, we just see some incredible productivity happening at these companies. And the reason why is because they're following something called Gleicher's formula for change. David Gleicher was this absolutely astonishing, amazing economist in the 1950s and 1960s that embarked on a study on what makes people change. In other words, what are the different factors necessary that really gets people to change? And he found that there are only three things that gets people to change. The first is dissatisfaction. In other words, there have to be some level of dissatisfaction with their life, with their career, what have you, in order for them to make a change. The second is, and get this one for you leaders out there, which, by the way, if you're watching this video, I commend you. You are a leader because you want to take your business to the next level, and that is so commendable. What we say is that business growth creates opportunity for everybody, not only for the business owner, not only for yourself, but also for the people around you. And that is I think business ownership is one of the most philanthropic things a person can do because, number one, it's very difficult to start. But also, as you grow it, you create opportunities just for so many people, and you really add value to so many people. So if you're watching this video and you own your own business, I just want to honor you and commend you for the risk that you took and creating something that really employs other people, provides for people's families, and really adds value to the community. So thank you for that. So getting back to Gleicher's formula for change, the second component is a vision. In other words, it's not just enough to get somebody to change to be dissatisfied. They also have to have a vision of what their future can look like after they make the change. So, for example, one of our employees that we work with said, look, here's our blue sky vision, which is basically to be the largest independently owned and operating consulting company and training company in the United States. And one of our employees basically said, you know what, I really like that vision, but I'm not so sure that I fit into it. And I said, well, how so? He says, well, I'm just a copywriter. And I said, okay, well, what are your aspirations? Like, well, my aspirations is one day to own a marketing company. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, as we grow in our business, we'd actually like to offer a full-service marketing company to our clients, to where they can come to us and get websites done, and they can get their copy done and their graphics done. And his eyes lit up and his face lit up. He goes, that's what I want to be a part of. And I said, well, how long do you want to get there? And he says, well, I was thinking about doing the next 4 to 5 years. He says, you know what? By that time, we should be at that point where we're ready to do that. So, could you see a fit for your career visions within our vision? He said yes, and he's totally bought into it. We actually created an actual detailed plan on how we were going to get him there. Because what I found is that it's much better to lead through love versus through discipline. What I mean by that is that once you understand what your employees are trying to get to, because at the end of the day, these are people that want to be successful. They really do. I mean, if you have an employee that just is absolutely adamant against being successful or being a positive force in your company, I would really determine what is their driving force in, what motivates them. Because most people have at least an idea of what they want to accomplish. And if they don't, what does it say about you as a leader that you actually take the time out of your busy day and say, hey, what is it you're looking to accomplish? And can you see that happening within our company? And we've even had cases to where people came to us and said, you know what, we both come to the conclusion that they're not going to be able to realize their vision in our company. And our recommendation to them, even though they might be a decent employee or a contributing team member, is, you know what, we need to find a plan to help you do that, even if it's not with our company, because at the end of the day, we see that one of our main purposes is not only to deliver freedom to business owners, but also deliver freedom to the employees of those businesses as well, so that they can reach their full potential based upon their God-given talents and their God-given skills. So those are the leadership components of how to get everybody engaged on the same page. And let's remember that the main problem that we're solving here is that study that Gallup did in 2012, which is this: 20% of employees at a given company are miserable at their job. In other words, they just can't stand coming to work every day. 50% are apathetic, which means they're not really your best producers or your best performers, but they're not your worst either. They just kind of come to work, go through the motions, and collect their paycheck. In other words, it's not like they over-deliver, but they don't under-deliver either. And then we have the 30% that they said were actually engaged into the process. And those people really, what we find, are the ones that really contribute. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the people who are miserable at least to apathetic, and move a significant amount of people from those who are apathetic to actually are engaged and really buy into your vision and really see how they fit into that vision. Because what we're really doing here, by appreciating people for what they're doing and communicating that vision, what we're doing is being consistent with human nature. You know, this isn't some hokey, smoky kind of stuff we're talking about. This stuff actually works because it's consistent with the way that people behave. And we find that when we're consistent with human nature versus trying to oppose it using dictatorship or trying to run by, the iron fist, we actually find that people respond to it very, very, very well. Because like we said, people want to be appreciated for the work, and they want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. So that's the leadership component of how to get your business to the next level and how to engage people. The second part, though, is crucial. I want to say that as you're developing the leadership components, which is your brand identity, your core values, the SWOT analysis, and the blue sky vision, really include your leadership team, include your COO, your executive team, your CFO. Really include them in the process, because as we said in the first video, when somebody feels like they're actually contributing to something, they feel like they're actually building something for themselves. So the more input you can get from them, the better. So that's the leadership component. The second component that I want to talk about as to how to really engage people is what we call the management component of leadership and of getting people engaged into your business to where they're inspired in their work versus just kind of drudging or hating their work. And we find that as you go through this particular segment, or as you go through this process, you really want to get your mid-managers and supervisors involved in this process. Because you want to invoke that whole principle that if people help build it, it feels like it's part of themselves. In other words, if they help create it, they feel like they actually built it. It's interesting, one of the companies that we actually delivered this process at is a very, very well-established company that does masonry. They actually do bricks for communities and stuff. And they said, Charles, what can you do for us? It's, these people are low-wage earners. I mean, they're, what really can you do for them? And we found that's like, well, at the end of the day, these people are people, and they're probably motivated by the same things. And when we included them in this process, the executive team was absolutely amazed at the level of detail and knowledge and ideas that these people had on how to help the executive team accomplish their goals. Because very few times do executive teams ask their staff and ask their managers on what ideas they have in order to move the business forward. However, we find that when we ask them, not only do they appreciate the fact that we asked them, but they also like feeling like they're helping contribute to the vision by giving their ideas. So here's the first real component that is absolutely necessary to get your team to engage at the managerial level and the supervisory level. And here's a great thing, y'all. When you implement these things, we find that mud always rolls downhill. Now, there's another word for that, but I prefer to use mud instead, which is this. Oftentimes, when leadership takes an initiative, we find that the other people will eventually follow. They may not follow today or tomorrow, but they eventually will. Especially when you ask them for their feedback, and especially when they feel appreciated for the work and see how they're contributing to society versus just getting a paycheck. So the first thing you want to do with your executive team and with your management staff is you want to create a 5-year goal. In other words, in 5 years, where do you want to be? If you remember from our first video, the first video talked about that the blue sky vision is a 10-year goal. And a 10-year goal should be in such a manner that it stretches you but also seems reasonable to get to. Like, for example, I gave the example to where an architecture firm wanted to have 5 offices in 5 different locations across the United States with 50 or more employees. They're not there now, of course, but that's their blue sky vision. That's what they want to accomplish. We gave the example of John F. Kennedy. He said that his blue sky vision was in the next decade, I think he said that this in 1960 or 1961, he said the next decade we want to get a man on the moon. And sure enough, a man on the moon did happen. So the 5-year goal is taking into consideration what your blue sky vision is and saying, okay, if we get to the halfway point in 5 years, where do we want to be? Now, before we get too detailed into this, I want to cover the fundamentals of goal setting, because if I don't give you kind of this framework as to what a goal should look like, you might run the risk of going down the wrong path, and I don't want to lead you down the wrong path. So let's talk about the framework of a goal. And a goal should be SMART. You know, as part of a certified trainer for the Brian Tracy organization, which is an international organization, the reason we followed him is because when I started, or the reason why we use his process is because it's time tested and it works every single time. You know, when I started at Anderson Consulting in 1996, I was told by my partner at the time that there's 3 things necessary to run a great practice, a great consulting practice. One is you got to surround yourself with great people. I think that's kind of a given. The second thing is you have to have great business processes and documented business process. The third thing is you have to have a great methodology, a methodology that has been time tested and proven to work time and time again. So that's why we chose to partner with Brian Tracy International, and that's why we are certified through his organization to deliver all this great content that he's perfected and owned over the last 38 years, that we've delivered this particular leadership to over 1,109 to be exact, businesses, and they've seen their business just skyrocket. Incredible. The average increase in profit is 22%. We've seen a 76% reduction in bad turnover, a 18% increase in customer retention. So the benefits of doing the process that I'm showing you has been proven time and time again to work. But as we get into the goal setting parts of the plan, or of the getting your employees to engage, I want to make very sure that we cover what a goal is, because what we're trying to do at the end of the day is empower your people to help you get your business to the next level or to your blue sky vision. So goal has to have the following component. It has to be SMART. SMART is an acronym which stands for, S stands for specific. Your goal has to be specific. Wanting to make more money is a wish, not a goal. Wanting to make an additional $100,000 per year, now that's a goal because that's specific. The second component of goal setting has to be measurable. In other words, somebody needs to be able to look at a number, or look at a tax return, or look at your lifestyle and say, okay, have you or have you not achieved that goal? So it has to be measurable. The A stands for align with your values. You know, I have a client of mine that when I first met him, he wanted to double his business in 6 months. And he said, can I double my business in 6 months? I said, well, of course you can. You just got to be willing to do all these different things to get there, and you might have to sacrifice some family time. He said, well, you know, I've got a young family and I really enjoy spending time with them, and you know, the one thing that I can't get back is time, which is a very wise saying. So what I told him was like, well, that I'm concerned about your goal of doubling your business in 6 months because of the sacrifices you're going to have to make with your family. So he actually adjusted his goal because it wasn't aligned with his values. So goals are great, but they have to be aligned with your values. And R stands for reasonable. And out of all the 5 components of goal setting, this is probably the one most subjective. So I get often asked the question, well, reasonable to whom? Well, reasonable to the most important person, which is yourself. If it's reasonable to you, then it's reasonable. And the T stands for timely. It has to have a deadline. In other words, you should be able to look at a point in time and say, did we or did we not accomplish this goal? Now, because I gave you that this is going to be a 5-year goal, I kind of took care of that deadline for you, but they do have to follow the SMART goals. So the first thing is in order to empower your people, which is the second major component of engaging your employees. The first one, which again we talked about in the first video, was to engage your employees. I'm sorry, the first one is to engage your employees. The second one is to empower your employees. And the way that you empower your employees is you bring them in, articulate to them what your brand purpose is or what your identity statement is. Those 2 terms are interchangeable. Second is to communicate your core values. Third is to share with them your SWOT analysis, and then your blue sky vision. And then after you've articulated that to them and they have acknowledged that they understand what you're trying to achieve, it's time as a leader now to step back and say, okay, if this is our blue sky vision, what are the 3 to 5 goals that we should have over the next 5 years in order to make sure that we're on track to get to our blue sky vision? And then step back and take their input. Find out what it is that you think that they should, or what they should think should be there in 5 years in order to accomplish those goals. So you're going to have 3 to 5 of them that you come out after about this 1 hour to 1.5 hour session. You're going to come up with your 5-year goals, 3 to 5 5-year goals that allow you to reach your blue sky vision, which are consistent with your values, with your SWOT analysis, and with your brand identity. See how it all fits together? In other words, your 5-year goal supports your 10-year goal, which supports your core values, which supports your brand purpose. That way, everything is in alignment and your employees buy into it because now they feel part of something bigger than themselves. So, the first step is to create your 5-year goals. The second step after that is to break those 5-year goals down into the next 12-month goals. And we recommend having no more than 5 to 7 one-year goals. So those one-year goals should be done at a company level. We're going to talk about a little bit about how you really get it down to the employee, to the actual department. But we want to keep these goals at the corporate level. So the one-year goal kind of is your measurement stick that you're on track to reach your 5-year goals. And again, they also have to follow the SMART framework of goal setting. They have to be specific, measurable, align with your values, reasonable, and timely. Now again, the great thing is, since these are 12-month goals, the 1 year kind of takes care of itself because it's assumed that you're going to accomplish these goals in 12 months. And again, it's absolutely imperative that you get your employees to buy in. We did this for a company a little while ago. As a matter of fact, yesterday, and we brought in the employees after we did the leadership components of it, which is, again, the brand purpose, the values, the SWOT analysis, and the vision. And we really communicated to them. And the leadership team was actually very, very skeptical that they would get any type of feedback whatsoever. Well, after the leadership team finished with this, the ideas that came from the management team and the supervisors completely shocked, in a good way, the executive team and said, gosh, these are great ideas. These are better ideas than I have. And it makes sense because these are the people that are involved on a day-to-day basis with your business. We had a meeting with a credit union a couple of days ago, and they said, you know what, we really find that the best ideas do come from our staff. It's just shocking how few managers actually ask for their input. But these are the guys and these are the ladies that are interacting with their customers the most. And that's the idea here, is when you get and solicit their feedback, you're not only respecting that person because you're getting their feedback, but also they feel part of something bigger than themselves now. They feel like they're actually helping create something that brings value to society. So really, really allow that interaction to happen. Don't, no idea is dumb, no idea is stupid. Write all the ones down and then say, okay, once I've listed all these goals and you've solicited feedback from everybody, what are the 5 to 7 goals that are the most effective that allow you to get to your 5-year goal, which is consistent, of course, once again, with your SWOT analysis, your core values, your blue sky vision, and ultimately your identity statement. See how it all works together? And that's the whole purpose of this. We want this to all work together in harmony to make sure that everybody is moving in the same direction. In the Bible in Genesis, there talks about a time where God came down to confuse the language of people because he thought that they were doing evil in unity. Now, in that case, that was an example of bad unity, but one of the things that God has set up in this world is unity. That when people are moving in the same direction, God is a God of unity. He likes moving forward all at once. For good things to be accomplished. When you're moving in unison with your team, it's incredible what the atmosphere is, what the culture happens, and how much you get accomplished in a very short period of time. So now you've got your 5-year goals with the input of your team. You've got the 1-year goals. What's next? The last part is, by department, come up with 90-day goals. There's this great book called The 5 Disciplines of Execution. One of the disciplines, it's the 4 disciplines of execution. So Stephen Covey, I apologize, I misquoted you. It's 4 disciplines of execution. One of the disciplines there was to have 90-day sprints or 90-day goals. Because with all the stuff that happens in our business on a daily basis, and with just the sheer amount of energy that it takes just to run your business, adding more to it can often seem difficult. So we want to get these down to where, okay, we want to break down this 1-year goal down into 90-day goals by department. So if you have operations and finance and HR and sales and marketing, you want to say, okay, now that we've got these 12-month goals, let's break these down into 3 or 4 goals by department that will ensure that we accomplish our 1-year goal. Does that make sense? So for example, if your goal is to increase sales by $1 million or by 20% or whatever the number is, what does the sales team need to do over the next 90 days to make that happen? What does HR need to do to make that happen? Do you need to hire more sales staff? What does marketing need to do? Are there any marketing collaterals that are missing that need to be included? What does operations need to do? Because let's face it, if you bring on more sales, the fact of the matter is that operations needs to make sure that they have enough people and resources and process to make sure to handle that new volume. For finance, can we finance that growth based upon what our payment terms are, based upon what our gross margins are? So as you can see, what it does is it really unifies your team. And that's the whole point of this. The point of leadership is to get everybody moving in the same direction towards a common goal and a common purpose. So once again, the management aspect to you really start empowering your people and get their feedback is come up with your 5-year goal, your 1-year goal, and then your 90-day sprints by department. Now in our next video, we're going to talk about, okay, now after we have established those goals, how do we encourage and keep our team accountable in a good way, in a way that encourages them and motivates them to accomplish their goal? And how do we track them and how do we delegate that work in an efficient, effective manner so that we make sure that we stay on track? So look out for that video over the next couple of days. I hope this has been tremendously helpful for you because at the end of the day, we're in business to deliver freedom to you and to your employees. Look out for that video in the next couple of days. Have a good one. Bye-bye.